Harvard law professor Alan Dershowitz acted as Donald Trump's attorney during his Senate impeachment trial. The famed, highly respected veteran lawyer is a Democrat. He votes for Biden, but he believes everyone has the right to due process. No one is above or below the law, he says. And it's because of these principles that he chose to act for Donald Trump. But it has cost him. Today, I spoke to him about Trump's indictment, Jeffrey Epstein's death, and he also reveals how Caroline Kennedy, the US ambassador to Australia, snubbed him over Trump. Professor Dershowitz, so brilliant to have you on my program. Welcome.
Thank you.
Now, do you think these criminal prosecutions against Trump are more likely to galvanise support for him than had he not been charged? And do you think he is now more likely to win the Republican presidential primary?
In the Republican primaries, yes. It makes it more likely that he'll be the Republican nominee, which is why some Democrats favor that, because they think that Joe Biden can beat Donald Trump and he probably can't beat DeSantis. So there are people both in the Republican base who want to see him nominated and people in the Democratic base who want to see him nominated. So it may help both Democrats and Republicans. The losers will be people in the middle, centrists, who want to see the best possible president.
Now, the indictment is still sealed. We haven't seen all of the evidence. But why do you expect this to be the weakest of the 4 cases that are currently being investigated against Trump?
All 4 of them are very, very weak. This is the weakest of all because it relies on a witness with a long, long record of lying. And there just is no crime. The alleged crime is that he paid hush money, which is legal, and he paid it for purposes of making sure the information didn't get out. And then they accuse him of not putting it in the public record in his corporate forms. Nobody in history has ever put hush money that has been paid into a corporate form. Why would you pay the hush money if you then had to make it public? It's one of the most absurd indictments, if that's indeed what the indictment charges. Also, it was 6 years ago, and they could have arrested him and they could have indicted him any day in the last 6 years, but they didn't. And yet they chose to indict him when he was outside of the state anyway. He was in Florida when they indicted him.
Isn't the issue that if he used campaign finances to pay the hush money, that would be a serious misuse of campaign funding? Isn't that the central issue?
Yeah, it usually gets you a $5 fine. It's never charged as an indictment. It never succeeds as a felony. And nobody would ever charge anybody else except Donald Trump. And the federal government didn't charge him. It's allegedly a federal crime. The federal government said no. And the DA that preceded Bragg said no. And Bragg said no. And then there was pressure put on him. The New York Times reported that there was enormous pressure put on him to indict. And then he succumbed to the pressure. So this is a purely political act. Look, I'm a liberal Democrat. I want to vote against Trump for the 3rd time. I don't like him as president. I want to see Joe Biden as president, but I care more about the rule of law. And that's why I wrote my book. I wrote a book called Get Trump, which is not so much about Trump. It's about the American system of justice. The subtitle is The Threat to Civil Liberties, Due Process, and Our Constitutional Rule of Law. And I think there's an enormous threat. Today it's Trump. Tomorrow it could be a Democrat. The day after tomorrow it's your Uncle Charlie. And after that, it's your niece. It's a terrible, terrible precedent.
And I want to get to your book in a moment, but I just want to finish asking you about the active cases against the former president. Can I turn to the case where Trump has taken home classified documents and failed to secure them? This is one of the more serious cases against him, and he is guilty here, isn't he?
He is, but so is Joe Biden. So they're not going to be able to go after him unless they go after Joe Biden and Vice President Pence. So the first 3 cases are very weak legally. The classified document case is strong legally, but impossible politically. But that's the only one that has a plausible legal and factual basis. He will claim that he declassified everything when he was president, and that will be a factual dispute. But I think he might lose that one, but I don't think they're going to bring a federal case against him without also bringing a case against Biden, and I don't think they'll bring a case against Biden.
So in the Georgia case, President Trump says he needs to find 13,000 votes on a tape. Is this not an indication of guilt?
No, it's a pure indication of innocence. It's the best evidence of innocence imaginable. He didn't say make up 13,000. He didn't say concoct He didn't say invent. He said find. Find has a dictionary meaning. It means it's there, and you should look hard and find it. Find is his best defense. You can't prosecute somebody for saying something that's innocent, arguing that maybe he meant something else. But he said find, and find has a meaning. It means something is there. There are votes are there. Look hard for 13,000 votes that haven't been counted. That is the easiest, one of the easiest cases to win.
And so what about this other one, the fourth one in New York State, where the New York Attorney General is behind a civil lawsuit claiming that the Trump organization lied to lenders? Is this, does this have legs? Do you think, is President Trump worried about this one?
Well, it's a civil suit. And every single real estate operator in New York overstates the value of the property and for purposes of getting loans, and then understates it for purposes of taxation. So it's a very, very common thing. And banks are the ones who are supposed to check the value of the building. And so it's a hard case, but it's only a civil case. It's only about money. And so it won't affect his presidential run at all. The other cases are criminal.
So which case, if any, do you think could actually land Trump in prison?
None. I would bet anybody will not end up in prison. He may end up being convicted in New York because 87% of New Yorkers in Manhattan voted against him, and they hate him, and they feel strongly about him. And judges and jurors will not want to come home to their family and say, we're the people who freed Donald Trump and allowed him to become the next president. So I think he could lose in New York, but it would be reversed on appeal, and there won't be any prison time for that.
Do you expect that in this current case that tomorrow we will see Trump fingerprinted? Will he have a mugshot like every other accused criminal in New York? Or do you think his team are going to ask for him not to be mugshotted in case the image is leaked, which of course it surely would be?
Well, it's not leaked. It's a public image. He should be mugshot. He should be fingerprinted, and it should be available to the public. And it'll probably become one of the best-selling T-shirts out there. So many people are going to want T-shirts with a picture of him. And, he's very defiant. He wrote me a letter this morning. I didn't vote for him, but I defended him, so I know him. He wrote me a text this morning. Alan, getting ready to leave for New York. Can't really believe it. These maniacs want to destroy our country. So sad. Nothing on Hunter or Biden, and their crimes are so bad. Anyway, your words are so important. Save America. P.S. Congratulations on the book. Doing very well. He was very happy about my book, Get Trump, because it's become an Amazon bestseller and people are reading it all over the country. And that's sending a message to brag that somebody is looking over his shoulder.
He doesn't sound very worried about these cases in those text messages. He sounds defiant.
He is defiant, and he should be defiant. This is a scandalous misuse of the criminal justice system. This by a person who votes against him. It will create a terrible precedent in which other prosecutors will go after people of the opposing party. Remember, this is a prosecutor who ran on the platform of getting Trump essentially to help defeat Trump when he runs against the head of the Democratic Party. This is an extreme example of the politicization of the criminal justice system, and it's very, very dangerous for America.
Look, you say prosecutors shouldn't be, rummaging around trying to find something against Trump, and you talk about how this is an outrage of justice. But shouldn't a president and a presidential candidate be completely, held to the highest standards so that if anyone did go digging, there would be nothing to find against them?
They should be held to the highest standards for purposes of voting for them, and that's why I'm going to vote against him. But there was a cartoon that was a very good one recently. It showed Trump tearing off the tag on a mattress, and American mattresses have a sign that says, tearing off this tag is a violation of law. You don't go rummaging through the statute books, just trying to find something that you can pin on somebody, whether they're running for president or not. If you want to vote against them, that's fine, but the criminal law has to be applied equally. No one is below the law. No one is above the law. The law has to be applied equally to everybody.
Professor Dershowitz, it took courage for you to act for Trump in the Senate impeachment. As you write in your book, Get Trump, you were ostracized socially for that. You even had Caroline Kennedy, who's the new American ambassador to Australia, tell you that if she had known you were going to turn up to a dinner party, she wouldn't have attended. I think that's extraordinary.
Oh, it's extraordinary, especially since I defended her uncle, Ted Kennedy. I was one of his lawyers at Chappaquiddick, and I have worked closely with her other uncle, Robert Kennedy. And she's been to our house. I've been to her house. I wouldn't say we were friends, but we were acquaintances. And the idea that she is supposed to be the ambassador to Australia, she's supposed to be able to talk to the head of China, and she can't sit next to me at a dinner party because I defended somebody who she disapproves of. It's un-American and it's unsuited to a diplomat. You talk about presidents being held to a high standard. American ambassadors to Australia ought to be held to a high standard, and she fails that standard. It's been terrible. My wife went to a gym to work out, and a woman said, "That's Alan Dershowitz's wife. I can't be in the same room." And imagine how judges in New York will react. They don't want to be Dershowitz. They don't want to be treated the way I was treated. So they're going to lean over backwards not to be the person who freed Trump. I just defended him, and I got treated this way. Imagine how badly a judge would be treated if he freed Donald Trump or if he ruled in favor of him. There is no possible way Trump could get a fair trial in Manhattan any more than he could get a fair trial in Martha's Vineyard, where I was ostracized. The case should be moved to a different area where the voters are more equally divided. In Manhattan, over 85% of the voters voted against Donald Trump, and they hate him with a passion that makes objective justice impossible.
Professor, you spoke a moment ago about how you hope Joe Biden wins the next presidential election, that is, if he runs, of course. But surely he's not the best presidential candidate that the United States can find? Given his clear aging and at times incompetence in expressing himself.
I have voted since John Kennedy, and I've never voted for the best possible candidate that a country can find. I vote for the least worst candidate. Every single candidate, including Kennedy, has had deep flaws, as I'm sure have Australian prime ministers and leaders. You don't vote for perfection. You vote for the best or the least worst candidate. Biden is better than Trump, and Biden can beat Trump. Can Biden beat DeSantis? That's a hard question. That's why many, many, many Democrats want to see Trump get the nomination so that Biden can beat him in 2024 the way he beat him in 2020. And it will hurt Trump that he claimed that he won the 2020 election, because almost nobody rational believes that that's true.
Look, you also acted for Jeffrey Epstein. I have to ask you, Professor, while I'm interviewing you, how do you think he died?
Well, I think he was helped to commit suicide. I think he or somebody else paid off the guards to turn the video cameras off. Yes, I did represent him, but I also represented, Bill Clinton. I also represented Nelson Mandela. I also represented many, many, many prominent people. So I'm very proud of my representation, and I'll continue to represent controversial people.
If Trump is sentenced to prison for this case, what do you think that would say about America and democracy?
It would mean the end of the American legal system as an objective, neutral, unbiased application of equality in the law. It would be a terrible day, but I don't think it's going to happen.
I appreciate your time, Professor Dershowitz. Thank you very much. And look, he's a brilliant guy, and if you've missed any of that interview, if you're just tuning in now, you can catch up on the Sky News website, skynews.com.au. Alan Dershowitz, he was Trump's impeachment attorney. Fascinating insights.